everyone. Welcome to Whiskey Monster on YouTube, which I'm not using a lot, but when there is a special guest, I use it. And today I'm at Wally, Santa Monica with one of, how can I say, one of my favorite brands in the world and one of the people that actually makes it happen, Mr. Michael Stephenson. Hello, Michael.
Hello, Corey.
Welcome to Los Angeles.
Thank you very much. Very good to be here. Yeah.
Wonderful to have you here. So we met in London, if I'm not wrong, a couple years ago when I was at the London Whiskey Show, and our common friend Karen just introduced us to each other. And since that day, we kind of kept in touch.
Yeah.
But he was here in Los Angeles today, and I wanted to have this opportunity to use to understand how Compass Box is evolving, what Michael is doing in his daily job, and what we actually did today here at Wally's, because we had kind of a special event. Yeah. But first of all, can you please introduce yourself, what you do for Compass Box?
For sure. So my name is Michael Stephenson. I am one of the whiskey making team. So I'm one of 3 whiskey makers at Compass Box. I am very privileged to be able to walk into the blending room every day when I'm back in the office and get to discover, the whiskeys that we have in our warehouse and how we want to bring them together for either our core range products or to create something new and exciting and completely different. So, yeah.
It's a different world, because when we talk about Compass Box, we're talking about a brand that has been there for 25 years, quarter of a century, but it still feels new to us, like it still feels new brand. But at the same time, it's a brand that actually broke a lot of walls, broke a lot of rules, to be honest. And you were there as the UK brand ambassador, if I'm not wrong, when I met you, and you just actually made yourself to the blending room as the whiskey maker. How does that feel? How did that happen?
I mean, it's it's just one of those things where you got to have some dreams and you got to set your mind to them. And I've been a massive whiskey fan for many, many years. A massive fan of Compass Box for probably a good 15 years. I moved over to the UK in 2021 in order to get closer to the world of whiskey.
And you're from South Africa?
From South Africa, that's correct, yeah. And I wanted to get closer to the world of whiskey. I ended up applying for a role at Compass Box, which was just a dream come true. Because at the time, I didn't realize when I moved to London, I had moved a couple hundred meters down the road from John. I was just around the corner from the office. So it feels kind of fated and a bit of destiny at the same time. But it's, I absolutely immersed myself in the world of Compass Box. I had quite a bit of knowledge prior to coming into the business, and just, got to share a lot of the word of what we did. And I'd always tried to be as close to the whiskey making side. I mean, it was very exciting for me. I come from, a hospitality and spirits background. So cocktails, flavor, all of these kind of things were very exciting to me. Bringing elements together to create something that's, more than the sum of its parts has always been a part of what I've done. So yeah, getting to do that with whiskey just felt like a really natural progression. So very, very lucky that, I've had the opportunities I've had and to be on this side of the business, and, don't take it for granted. I try and immerse myself in the magic of it every day.
I think Compass Box made a lot of friends, including me. I became a fan 10 years ago. We'll come into that. But at the same time, I don't know anyone that's not a fan of hedonism without being a fan of Compass Box. So let's start with hedonism.
Let's pour your dram. It feels terribly rude to have a dry glass in front of you for too long.
Honestly, like this whiskey explains my personality.
Oh, amazing.
But also is a groundbreaking whiskey when it was released as the first whiskey from Compass Box 25 years ago. Can you just give us a really quick history about that?
Yeah, so the idea is our founder, John, had been working previously with another, really lovely blending house, and had tasted beautiful grain whiskies at this time. And, grain whiskey wasn't really a thing when hedonism came about. It was something that was very rarely done as a single grain, release. It was kind of put into a blend, and people thought it was just a cheaper style of whiskey that was thrown in there to sort of bulk it up. John had tasted some of these gorgeous grain whiskeys, some of these older grain whiskeys, and was like, why are we not selling this? The company turned around to him and said, we just don't think people will understand grain whiskey. So he said a lot of what he did in the business was in the defense of common sense. So he just turned around and said, I think this is a great opportunity to showcase what we can do. So when he set up the business, this was the first whiskey he released, Hedonism. At the time, it was the first blended grain Scotch whisky on the market. So it was a pioneering move to start a business and do something that nobody had ever done before, and quite risky. But the idea is he strongly believed in the fundamentals that grain whisky has got beautiful qualities to showcase. So this is how we started out. It's always been a whiskey that's tried to marry this idea of really active wood with beautiful grain profile. This particular release is the 2025 annual release, so we're releasing Hedonism as an annual release these days. So lots of really active American oak that's going to give you this vanilla, caramel, butterscotch, beautiful sort of pastry cream quality. This particular batch, you're going to find a lovely sort of dark cocoa powder note that starts to come through, which I really love. It's very intriguing.
The older ones are a little bit more on the buttery side.
Yeah, and it also depends on your components. So sometimes the previous 2024 version that we released had some grain whiskey from Cameron Bridge that was produced in the 1990s, had a higher corn ratio in the mash bill. So that's where you would get a lot more of this like buttery popcorn sort of quality. These ones here are probably a bit more sort of wheated as such. So that's where you'll get this like pastry cream.
Creamy texture.
Yeah, that's it. And yeah, cheers. Slanger. It also does mark the first time that we've included a small parcel of whiskey that is not exclusively aged in American oak in Hedonism. So this has about 2.8% Cameron Bridge that has spent time in ex-Marsala casks.
Oh, lovely.
So you get this subtle little suggestion of maybe some dates coming through, a little bit of this apricot profile.
Oak spices are in there.
Yeah, and it starts to lift it out a little bit. So
it's very... I've been a big Hedonism fan, starting from the first bottlings. I still have some. But finding this, I find it a little bit more of a summer whiskey.
Yeah, okay.
Rather than the old hedonism that we all know.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's a great way to look at it. It's this is the idea. Is every time we release it now, we still want it to keep true to the personality of hedonism, but doing it in these sort of annual release batches, it means that we can explore some of the different sides of what we think hedonistic grain is all about. So, you know, hedonism, when it was released, was also, interestingly, the first Scotch whiskey to have a woman's image on the label. So that's why now when we create the annual releases, we lean into these beautiful artworks on the label. So this is an artwork done by an Argentinian artist called Sophia, and she gets to create this beautiful image, and we create the whiskey, and they eventually come together to create the full story, which is a beautiful part of the process.
Lovely. But today we joined here for totally something else. So we did a whiskey and cheese pairing at Wally's, because Wally's has an incredible selection of cheese, by the way. But I know that you have been doing this for at least for the last 26 weeks. I stalked you. So you have been doing this for a while. It's not a new idea, honestly. Like a lot of brands out there did cheese pairings. And what gave you the idea that this is not something ordinary? This is something that Compass Box can actually elevate.
That's a great question. So, you know, we always talk about people drinking creatively. We want whiskey to fit into people's lifestyles. We're not trying to dictate. We don't like to have a lot of rules around whiskey where, you know, we tell you that you can or can't drink it a certain way. We'll offer lots of suggestions. And often that is something like cheese, because it is something that people get very passionate about and they get very sort of inspired by. So we, you know, just thought it was a perfect vessel. When you get a beautiful venue like this that has a phenomenal selection and people who specialize in this, it's great to be able to bring people in, take something that they may be quite familiar with, and find ways to relate it to the whiskeys that we produce. So I think it's a great combination. There's lots of discussion around flavors and complementary flavors and some that contrast and these kind of ideas. But if you look at cheese and as its essential form, I mean, it's a limited number of ingredients generally manipulated in a couple
nothing
different...
at all, technically. Yeah. Less than whiskey, actually, when we talk.
And it's manipulated in a couple different ways. Time, you know, these kind of things are factors in the process. And this is very similar to whiskey. So it's a lovely synergy that we have to talk about. And I find that, you know, it's a great thing, because we don't want people to drink and to eat. These things need to happen in community. But
when I do whiskey tastings, and I do this as a profession, it's really hard to pair spirits and food. It's really hard. Whoever says it's hard, because we are talking about a spirit that's over 40% ABV, 80 proof, which is not easy. But dairy elements also have some sharp side, like when you have a cheddar or when you have a camembert. You have different profiles that can actually match, and you can actually break the rules with whiskey or any other spirits. Actually, you can do that with mezcal too if you find the right one.
Yeah.
But what are you looking at flavor-wise to pair with the dairy products such as cheese or even maybe ice cream? Because dairy is kind of a magical thing, as we just spoke.
Yeah.
But what are you looking at profile-wise?
I mean, it's kind of the same thing as what we're looking at when we're producing whiskey in a lot of ways. So you're looking at fragrance. So you're looking at this aromatic quality that some of them can bring to the table. You're looking at flavor, what it's going to bring from that perspective. And you're looking at texture. And that's the same way we view the whiskeys that we make, is we're trying to create, complexity through these different elements. So some of these cheeses have got great creamy textures. Some of them are a bit more firm. What we have found generally with Scotch whisky, leaning a bit more into sort of cow's milk cheese, is a lot easier. So when you start getting into sort of goats and sheep, it can be a little bit more tricky because they are a much more intense sort of flavor profile. So sticking with the cow is a little bit of a safer bet in terms of being able to find harmonies. But then it is, trying to pull out certain profiles in certain whiskeys. So if something has got a little bit more American oak cask influence and you find something that's got a bit of nuttiness in the cheese, these are great things to be able to pair up. We did a great cheese today that we paired with the Orchard House that had actually been rolled in flowers that the cows were grazing on, which is amazing because it suddenly brought out all this incredible floral notes in the cheese, and that's a great thing to be able to lean into. So it's kind of identifying each cheese and what is makes it unique, and then seeing if there's a way to tie that back to the whiskey that we produce.
Lovely. So not everyone has the chance to do cheese pairing, whiskey pairing at home. If I was to do this at home, simple terms, you go to supermarket, let's say Tesco in your country, which is probably you can go to Trader Joe's, which has amazing cheese selection. I like Whole Foods more for their variety. What would you say? You go and buy a bottle of, let's say, Necarosity or Crimson Casks. What would you buy as a cheese?
Ooh, that's
any tips you want to give?
Yeah, it's a good question. Cheddars generally tend to be quite versatile, so it's something that you can use with a number of different styles of whiskey because you can get different levels of intensity. So, you're kind of using the whiskey as a guideline. If the whiskey's got a really dark color and it's a really intense, something like a sherry cask aged, then you maybe want to stick with something that's going to have a bit more robust qualities to it.
Lovely.
Whereas, maybe something a little bit milder if you want the whiskey to be able to match up to that. So if the whiskey isn't maybe as dark and rich and intense, then maybe something a little bit milder on that side. So generally a safer bet, that one.
Incredible. Perfect information about the cheese, which I adore. I do pair cheese, chocolate mostly. I try not to go to the food level, and that's my preference. But anyway, we're going to go a little bit deep into Compass Box right now, because Compass Box created fans all over the world, including myself, including a lot of my friends in Los Angeles and San Francisco. And when you go to my house, you will see 2 shelves of Compass Box.
Amazing.
It's too much. It's sickness level, I will be saying. And one of the reasons for that was whiskey makers just like you. John Glazer was a friend of mine. Jill Boyd was a friend of mine. James Saxon, amazing guy. And now you, old friend of mine, turned to be a whiskey maker. It's amazing. I love meeting all of you. And Compass Box has been pushing the boundaries of Scotch whisky for the last 25 years. Maybe even more than that. Created a lot of arguments, created a lot of debates in the Scotch world. But we had that part, and now we are kind of in the downtown in the Scotch world and whiskey world in general. What do you think? How do you think Compass Box is pushing the boundaries at this very moment? Maybe getting power from the past, and how do you see Compass Box changing the industry or supporting the industry?
It's a complex question, that, and it is a really interesting time for whiskey. So I think, we've found that a lot of people now, as the markets are fluctuating, are turning to blends again, and they're saying that this is something that we rely on. It's something that we really believe in. We're a business that has had a lot of fans who really do trust and have turned on to blends because of what we've done when before they thought it wasn't for them. So we feel a responsibility that we're there to pursue deliciousness and really intense flavor profiles that have quite a lot to offer, because we want people to have great options and at affordable prices. Our core range, we have evolved. We used to have 7 whiskeys in our core range not so long ago, which is quite a lot to navigate. It's a lot of different options.
I'm just going to interrupt you there.
Yeah.
A few years ago, we had this conversation because Compass Box was actually interrupting the market, disturbing the market in a way that we were not expecting. And one day I found myself sending an email, probably to John, saying that, guys, you released 9 limited edition whiskeys. What are you doing? And now it's kind of a different way, because now every brand is doing it. Maybe you were the pioneers of that. Now every brand is releasing limited editions every year, maybe 2, 3 of them. And now you are going back to 4 major whiskeys a
Well,
year.
yeah, I mean, this is the idea is, we had 4 whiskeys, so it gives us a little bit more focus. So in terms of our core range, this is whiskeys that we have all year round that are available that people can rely on.
I love when somebody pours me whiskey without me asking, by the way.
Well, like I say,
What am I drinking?
It's nothing sadder than seeing an empty glass. So it's this is Crimson Casks.
Alrighty.
So this here is predominantly Oloroso sherry cask influence. We do have a little bit of Spanish red wineberry coming through. Some of the custom French oak, which is something that we did to sort of shake things up a little bit and create flavor profiles that we couldn't find anywhere else. So yeah, fantastic dram, blended malt. You're looking at 46% ABV on the nose. Cheers. Just loads of like lovely rich chocolate fudge cake intensity. Lovely brown sugar, raisins. You're going to get
The strawberries flying out of the glass.
this lovely red fruit component, very jammy sort of cherry fruit component on the palate. There's this little bit of spice coming through. So it's not an over-the-top sherry bomb. It's got this lovely richness, but it's balanced. There is also this sort of like earthiness that comes through at some point.
I'll put it this way. When you have some red wine barrels or port barrels in your peated whiskeys from Islay, you have this jammy profile, which I love a lot. And that comes actually a lot with whiskeys like Kilchoman or Lafroy for me.
Yep.
You have the same texture, not the flavor, same texture,
Yeah.
but beautiful low profile red fruits. It's amazing.
Yeah, so phenomenal blend. We've just managed to win double gold at the San Francisco Spirits Competition, so very happy to have had that recognition. So it feels like people are responding to what we're doing, which is amazing.
As a judge at San Francisco Spirits
Well, there we go.
Competition,
I have you to thank then.
I wasn't there this year, unfortunately.
Oh, okay.
I had a cold, so I couldn't be there.
I mean,
But
that's
again,
hazards of the job.
yeah, going back to this is how Compass Box redefines the market. How do you define innovation at this point? Because you brought in transparency. When they didn't like your transparency, you brought in infographics
Yeah.
telling about your whiskey, which I'm not going to get into detail. That's another talk. But how do you define innovation for Compass Box right now?
So it is. I mean, we're looking at a number of different avenues. It's like how do we tell stories in whiskey that we feel are important, and how do we broach topics that we think are really important? We're looking to push the conversation forward. And we want flavor to be first with that. And that's the idea, is how do we find ways to pursue something that's really delicious? And we live now in a world where, I mean, the standard sort of stats is that every country that drinks whiskey is now producing whiskey. So this is an important milestone.
Aside from my country, Turkey.
Oh, really?
I have to say that.
Oh, that's sad to hear.
That's sad.
But yeah, I mean, the sentiment is that it's being made all over the world, and people, in terms of the general whiskey consumer, that they're curious now, and they will drink whiskey from other countries. So we've always felt it's very important that Scotch keeps reimagining itself in a way that pushes those boundaries and makes sure that it's staying relevant and it's staying interesting. And this for us is very important. So, with our core range, we stick to 4, really distinct flavor camps so that people who are looking to explore whiskey have lovely entry points into the brand. And then when it comes to the limited editions, we can go off on tangents and follow some really interesting threads, because it means we can pursue stories, we can pursue flavors, we can pursue process and technique, and maybe even stuff that's outside of that realm.
So I had the utmost chance to work for a blended Scotch whisky for a brief moment. And in that brief moment, I saw that the approach to blended Scotch is way different than I ever imagined. And you actually broke those rules. But to make a blended Scotch whisky is something that's mostly overseen. We don't know how Scotch whisky is made. Like when you look at your infographics, you have like 11 casks. How do you make them happen? So my question here is like, how is your personal approach to the creation, maybe the flavor creation of those Scotch whiskies that you are making, or maybe you want to make in the future? How do you approach to those flavors? And like when you, let's say, starting from scratch, I'm going to make MS, Michael Stephenson whiskey.
Yeah.
How do you do that?
I mean, this is the adventure. So it can come from a number of different inspiration points. Sometimes we start off with an idea and we want to pursue a certain style of flavor profile, and then we go down the process of seeing what we have available in our warehouses and what stocks we have, and then we'll start pulling a couple of them together. I strongly believe that momentum is a great vehicle for creativity, so it's really difficult to sit in front of a blank page for me and just try and come up with a recipe.
Yeah.
So, pulling a couple cask samples out, having a nose, having a taste, having a discussion, and suddenly the ideas start to circulate. And then we start bringing these elements together and seeing how they perform and see if it's matching up to the story that we're trying to tell. So this is, if you're sort of flavor-led in the conversation, sometimes it's an idea and you're talking about maybe something to do with philosophy or maybe something to do with music or art. And you're like, how do we portray this idea in liquid form? And this is it. When James created Velicor is the perfect example. Velicor was a word that was created to represent the aroma and the wistful sensation of a secondhand bookstore, which is just incredibly romantic.
Incredible
but also
packaging, by the way. Too.
Yeah, and it's also just something that it puts you in a sense of place, and you can immediately imagine that, and that's quite a transporting experience. So to be able to take that and transport it into a liquid experience is the challenge. Is now, how do I find whiskies that have these leathery qualities, that have this sort of dusty smokiness? So, you can get led from a couple different angles. And this is the challenge, is like, if we're making a core range whiskey, we'll have the structure of what we did the previous bottling, but it's still about taking all the elements and working it until it all connects and unpicking the lock all over again so that it makes sense. Whereas with the limited edition, you're chasing threads, and it's about holding this image in your head of what it's supposed to be and trying to get as close to that as possible.
Do you think, because I think so, creating a limited edition is a little bit easier than shipping the core range?
I mean,
where it is.
There's less expectation from the fans in a way, because you're not tinkering with something that they potentially love immensely. So
just imagine, like, I am just changing all the recipe for Black Label whiskey or for a brand.
Rather you than me.
You just change everything. And that's what I was getting into, because core range consistency is really important, and I think that's the hardest thing you're going with. Which Crimson Cask is one of the core range right now.
Yeah,
but I think this is the new member too, right?
That's it, Necarosity. So these both joined the fold at the same time. Necarosity joined, August, September last year, 2024.
You can try that.
And the idea behind this is wanting to lean into this beautiful cask-driven sweetness from American oak. So we kind of define it as whiskey meets patisserie. So it's this idea of these beautiful pastry chefs and the work that they do to create these layers of delicious flaky pastry and intensity. And then we've also got this beautiful fruit component here. So what you're looking at is 70-ish% malt whiskey, 30% grain. So you've got this blended Scotch component. You've got really active casks that we have seasoned or toasted and charred ourselves, and then seasoned with grain whiskey. Pulled the grain whiskey out and then used those same casks for the malt. So we deployed the cask twice, kept all the flavor, and it gives us this beautiful honey, soft toffee quality. But then you also have this incredible roller coaster ride of...
It feels like black peppers into a honeycomb.
Oh, amazing. I love that. But you see, this is it. This you can visualize that, and I love that. And
I can visualize all the peppers going down that.
So, I've been a fan of this whiskey ever since I first got to taste it when James was developing the recipe.
And what's the price range for that right now?
So, I mean, in the UK, usually around £55 bottle retail.
$65, yeah. I'm just saying. Just look online, Google, whatever, do that.
For sure.
To go to a little bit more serious things, I've been a Compass Box fan for over a decade right now, and a lot of friends of mine too. And we have seen some changes over the years, especially in the last few years, which Compass Box changed hands, John left, team changed a little bit. How would you describe the way that Compass Box is going to right now?
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting time for the whiskey industry. A lot of companies are having a lot of challenges at the moment. We are in a lucky position where we're able to continue and make some beautiful whiskey. It does mean that things will change from time to time. I'm very happy in the business at the moment because a lot of the people that we all got bought in are because we're fans. And I think this is a beautiful thing where everyone is there because they absolutely love what we do. So yeah, I think we still believe in the fundamentals and the principles of what Compass Box was founded on. It's very much a part of our DNA and the core of what we do. It's something that I hold true, and it's why I was drawn to the business. So yeah, I mean, this is what we're trying to do, is we're trying to pursue this essence that Compass Box has always had, is like, how do we be innovative and creative and push boundaries forward whilst making absolutely delicious whiskey along the way. So none of that is going to change. And I mean, sometimes, you know, the personnel changes. It's like in any sport, you know, people get subbed on and people get subbed off. It is part of the process, but everyone's got a part to play. And
I think pushing boundaries is the main thing here.
Yeah,
which is amazing. You have one more whiskey over there, I can see that.
Yes, I don't have enough for both of us, so I'm going to be very generously donating it to you here.
I'll just grab 2 more glasses. If you guys know me, you know that I'm so into glassware.
Sorry, that one had a try and crack.
Nice, see?
There we go. So yeah, here what we do have is our latest limited edition release, which is the Flaming Heart. So this here being the 8th version of Flaming Heart. So we've got just enough here to share a toast together. So this is the 8th version of Flaming Heart. It's a whiskey that was inspired by a rock song. It is all about, you know, turning up the volume on flavor. What we have here is peat smoke and French oak coming together. This has always been the fundamentals behind Flaming Heart.
I am cheating at this point because I tasted this whiskey a month ago, and they generously sent me a sample, and it's honestly one of the best whiskeys I tasted this year. Incredible one.
Oh, that's high accolade to have bestowed upon us. But I appreciate that. But this, yeah, 48.9% ABV, as Flaming Heart always is. But just beautiful intensity. We've got some beautiful Talisker inside of here. We've got whiskey from Williamson, as well as some Lafroig. The Lafroig being finished in Marsala. So it has this lovely, James describes it as this like sort of blueberry flapjack quality, which I think is really lovely. Some Ben Rinnes that's been done in the custom French oak. So
just to give you an idea, we are in a working bar right now, so
yeah,
there might be some disturbances.
We're hopefully not getting in the way too much. But yeah, this is, for me, it's just this beautiful intensity, but it's got this lovely toasted oak and this lovely spice profile. So
that's lovely.
Big fan of Flaming Heart.
Amazing.
Good whiskey for late night and good conversation.
Absolutely. And from this, we'll go to a new whiskey in a moment, and I will tell you a little bit my story with Compass Box. So, pleasure. What's it all about Compass Box and with me, Whiskey Monster? So, as a gentleman back in Turkey, when I was doing a tasting back in the Asian side of Turkey, which is Izmir, a big city over there, which everybody freaking loves, and a gentleman just hosted me a night and brought a bottle for my birthday from the Compass Box, and that bottle was the Lost Blend. Volkan, thank you very much for making me a fan of Compass Box, and also for creating a huge dent in my wallet. Another story. But Lost Blend was the first Compass Box product that I ever tasted.
Wow.
And ever since, I'm a fan. I've been collecting, I've been drinking mostly, and I also collect bottles. And this Lost Blend, I was so happy to find in my Northern California times. I was going to the liquor stores for business, and then I saw this Lost Blend bottle, and I asked the store owner, like, how many do you have? And he was like, I have like 2 cases. I was like, I'm buying them all.
Wow.
So that's one of these bottles. I still have this, and Lost Blend comes in 3 different stickers, labels, and I think I can create 2 sets of them with the bottles I have right now. But this is one of them, and I wanted to share that with you, Michael. This is pre your time.
Yeah.
This is pre your ambassador time too. But at the same time, after tasting this, we're going to do this or that, if you don't mind.
I'm down for it. Let's do it. Thank you very much.
You're very welcome. Do you know the details for this whiskey?
I could pull them up if we needed to, but this was a nod back to a whiskey we used to do, the Eleuthera.
So Eleuthera was a predecessor of this whiskey. Then it was followed by the Lost Blend, which was, I think it was a milestone in the story.
I mean, it was you know, sadly we had to discontinue one of the whiskeys, and suddenly we found ourselves in a situation where we had many years later enough stock to be able to potentially recreate the concept. So
That's what I'm expecting for a Sila and Spice Tree.
I mean, you and me both, I assure you. There's plenty of fans of both of those out there. I'm a very big Spice Tree fan too, so yeah, you never know.
So this whiskey is really special to me, not just with the flavor that it gets. Like, it has a lot of fruity flavors, stone fruits, which I personally love, underlined by great peat smoke, but the texture is what it makes it special.
It's everything.
It's
It
just
is.
creamy, but at the end it's a little bit biting your palate.
Yeah, just a little bit of a dusting of pepper, like sort of dances across the palate.
That's why I like it.
And it's got, it's
And I
gorgeous.
thought this is the best for us to do the this or that. I will be reading my this or that note. He doesn't have an idea.
Yeah,
So let's start.
let's do it.
Okay, I will just ask him about some Compass Box whiskies that he didn't create or he's been creating for a while. And we have some different stuff, so we'll see the winner at the very end. So let's go. Hedonism or Glasgow blend?
Hedonism.
Hedonism or Spice Tree?
Spice Tree.
Spice Tree or Peat Monster?
Spice Tree.
Spice Tree or Velikor?
Ooh, Velikor.
Velikor or No Name?
Which no name?
I will go with number 3.
Oh, Velikor.
Velikor or Necarosity?
Velikor.
Velikor or Crimson Casks?
I have a soft spot. Crimson Casks.
Okay, this is gonna be tough. This is wonderful. Crimson Casks or The Story of the Spaniard?
Crimson Casks for me.
Crimson Cask or The Spaniard?
Crimson Casks.
Okay, Crimson Casks or The Flaming Hot First Edition?
Ooh, I haven't gotten to try the first edition
Okay,
yet.
I can change that. Let's do Flaming Hot 2025.
I'd say Flaming Hot 2025.
Okay, Flaming Hot 2025 Ethereal.
I'm gonna go Flaming Hot 2025.
Flaming Hot 2025 Ultramarine.
I haven't picked my favorite Extinct Blends quartet yet, so I'm going to keep it neutral. Flaming Hot.
Okay, Flaming Hot 2025 or Lost Blend.
I mean, that's pretty exceptional. The Lost Blend for me there.
Oh yeah, this is gonna be harder.
Yeah, so that Lost Blend.
The Lost Blend or Tobias and the Angel.
Tobias and the Angel. That is, an exceptional whiskey.
Yeah.
And if I ever get the chance to try it again.
Okay, Tobias and the Angel or Experimental Grain Whiskey. Total different, like bipolar.
Yeah. I'd say Tobias and the Angel.
And for the actually, I'm gonna add a couple more from my memory. Tobias and the Angel or 3-year-old Deluxe.
3-year-old Deluxe.
3-year-old Deluxe or This Is Not a Festival Whiskey.
I haven't tried the festival, so I'd have to say 3-year-old Deluxe.
3-year-old Deluxe or This Is Not a Luxury Whiskey.
This is not a luxury whiskey.
Last question. This is not a luxury whiskey or the general?
This is not a luxury whiskey.
We got a winner.
Yeah, there we go. It's, that was a tough ride. Thanks for the challenge. I appreciate it.
You're welcome, mate.
Cheers.
Thank you very much, Michael. It's been such a wonderful 45 minutes on this end. And I had the perfect pleasure to talk to you about Compass Box, which is a brand that I love a lot. And I want to see it pushing the boundaries of the Scotch whiskey and actually whiskey in general. And thank you for being here with me at the Wally's in Santa Monica, Los Angeles. In a hard time for Los Angeles. So
Yeah, I mean,
I will say ice. We'll talk about that.
it's an absolute pleasure to be here with you. Thank you for your time and your energy and all the things that you do for the wonderful world of whiskey and for being a fan and just championing what we get up to. So
I think World of Whiskey is better as we communicate it, and that's what I'm trying to do. That's what you're trying to do. That's all of us, ambassadors, influencers, trying to do every single day. But let's just say the best thing. Sancho.
Yeah.